Shalom and welcome with Bindernowski. Kohelet 1 verse 9, the thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. The preachers said it plain and clear what to expect in 2026, so I could finish the message here. Let me anyway add my 2 coins on this matter, a bit shorter than the last message. 2025 is gone. What to expect in 2026? I would say for the minority, 25 was a great year. For the rest, it was rather arduous or even horrible. And I'm sure the super wealthy people gained again more than ever last year, and it will very likely continue in 2026. Their goal is anyway to gain the whole world, as they don't care in their blindness about losing their own soul and eternal life. Yes, nothing new. Look into the playbook to watch the deeds of Mao, Stalin, Hitler, Nero, Pharaoh, Nimrod, long before Bush, Obama, Merz, Macron, Starmer, and other crooks, and even the controlled opposition, whoever they are, the white tiles between the black ones on the checkerboard, black hats and white hats, so to say. Those who have eyes to see shall know where the train is heading to. The prophecies in Scripture are often not so easy to understand, but the general picture is pretty clear. And if we look around with open eyes, we see life today is very much like in the days of Noah, and we are in these days in the last days. Perilous times, everything gets very rough. More and more people are starving, which is clear according to the agenda of the wicked. It will increase, including massive depopulation and great reduction of fertility. I never bought into the hunger lies in the past, where some shady organizations claimed by our, so mine and yours, great donations, they will be able to erase hunger in the world within whatever 10 or 20 years. I never gave them a single penny. And when I look into the world now, 50 years later, my inner feelings back then are confirmed. Their goals was never to erase hunger. Where did all the money go? Who knows the pockets? Yeshua made it clear that it won't happen, even 2,000 years ago, when he said the poor people will always be around, and with poverty comes hunger. Anyway, as of the super wealthy, their days will come when they will realize they can't eat their money, as written in Ezekiel 2 verse 19, when they will cast their silver in the streets, because silver and gold shall not be able to deliver them in the days of Yeshua's wrath. It will not satisfy their souls, neither fill their bowels. At their end in hell, they will have endless time to think, if possible in their torment, about the stumbling block of their own iniquity, like the rich man who never shared anything with poor Elazar in front of his door. Will get some of them saved, possibly a few. Look through the eye of the needle and then you know how many of them might pass. So from money now into the digital world, I heard in India the entire digital database with IDs and money and banking, whatever, have been hacked. So much about cybersecurity. I actually worked for too many years indirectly in banking business. A company that builds ATM and stuff like that. From there, and also by a cybersecurity advisor, and from a friend who worked for an internet provider, plus 2 other network administrators, and one friend who sold computer stuff, has a good knowledge about all that stuff, all told the same story. Data security simply doesn't exist. Period. The operating systems are all designed with backdoors for NSA, CIA, and others. As governments will have anyway control and access to the digital database, there's tons of opportunity for abuse. And who knows what AI is doing. But as for 2026, we will surely see worldwide more and more pressure into the digital ID and money. But I don't think they will be able to make it mandatory everywhere this year. I assume the only way they may implement it by first crashing completely the old system, which they're already working on. For clever people, I would recommend to slowly or quickly start to build a parallel system similar to border deals or whatever. I am sure the governments will try to ban it, so the only possible way to avoid is to design it in a way that it can't be controlled by anybody. I don't know how, but I would assume it can be accomplished probably only somehow by honest relationships. No data, no documentation, just personal trust, even if it might be a bit flawed, but at least better than corrupt, and much better to be infiltrated by governments. So remain digital. How and where, into which direction will AI turn? I assume the development will be pushed further at an unprecedented rate. For those who use it completely to create their podcast, whether videos, audio, or text, I say, remember, the less you use your own brain, the more it will shrink. So don't wonder if one day you will not be able to write even the simplest stories anymore. I watched a few AI promotion videos, and there they describe how amazing and great AI is and how much it can accomplish within a short time or supposedly help humanity. Let's say in medicine or biology, AI can now analyze and process within an hour, where 150 of the best experts might need half a year. Well, but here's the catch. The entire foundation of AI is based on available information, but since a lot of science is just theory, hypothesis, and assumptions, the foundation is very sandy. Just for example, creation. All their data is based on a false model, the heliocentric ball Earth. So the entire house is built on this false and unbiblical foundation. And more so because AI don't have Yeshua, the creator of heaven and earth, in its calculation. It's just a matter of time when all lies will crumble. And eventually we will see a cyber war between the different AI systems, as most historic data talks about wars and rumors of wars. So AI is trained in war. And this, who knows, maybe extend into the physical somehow. When AI start to fight against another AI, for example, with power outages, when one AI hack into the system and switch off another AI's electric supply or launch nukes against each other. Tons of different variations possible. Well, I don't think such horror scenarios happen in 26 because AI is not yet that advanced enough to be completely autonomous. It still needs some manpower in the line for their hunger for electricity, which is actually equal to the hunger for power, very similar to almost all leaders in this world. And America and Trump, Ukraine is not solved yet and wondering what date is set in the playbook when it will stop. Maybe just in time before the midterm elections with Trump as the man who supposedly made the big peace deal and tap himself on the shoulder. And everyone will cheer and also to boost the votes in the midterm. Then Venezuela, I would not be very surprised of a false flag event to create a reason to invade Venezuela and carry another American plot for a regime change. And of course, install a puppet who will give most their oil to America. Remember, Trump is a businessman, dedicated also to do the bidding of the synagogue of Satan. And as long money flows, who cares about collateral? Oil is big business, and maybe greater are the drugs in Venezuela and anywhere else. Catch two flies with one stone. I don't think Trump is much different than other presidents before. They all have to bow down before the big banksters and the military-industrial complex or get removed. And if they don't go voluntarily, it will be made accidentally, quote-unquote, voluntarily for them. History is clear. He's, of course, not such an obvious puppet like Biden. But at the end, is there really any difference? The choice is yours, and time will tell. Surely I can't say if a false flag will be generated for the Venezuela issue, but I have no doubt, if not that, there will be many others for other sinister reasons. And then against the terror groups in Nigeria to protect the Christians, he can gain a lot of votes from the Christians too. And what a surprising coincidence, Nigeria has a lot of oil. The funny thing is, they have a Muslim government in Nigeria. Why not a regime change there? How would be the situation if they would have a good Christian government? One thing I know from a dear Nigerian friend, the love of money and corruption is extreme there in Nigeria. So a regime change should be easy, actually. The final thing about America might be the coming collapse of the dollar. Of course, to trigger the implementation of the quote-unquote new digital currency. That's very likely already in the pipeline. The dollar is already very much down, but it's hard to say if there's enough time for the dollar to crash in 2026. And if not, then very likely in 27. Now from America to Europe, will be very interesting how Europe will look like at the end of 2026. The farmers' protests have only started. Very disturbing but not surprising, the German Chancellor said that he gives the farmer an ultimatum. They also protest, yet not as strong as in Brussels. Maybe they pause now between the holidays. But anyway, Merz said if they don't stop till a certain given date and come to the table to debate, they, the farmers, will feel the full force of the law, with heavy fines and possible imprisonments. He didn't realize since decades the farmers tried to debate with the government, but were constantly neglected. If you see or hear the German Chancellor, you know his agenda is as evil or even worse than the deeds of the well-known Austrian painter. The only difference to Adolf is Merz is extreme corrupt and a psychopathic liar, and a weak coward with a personality softer than pudding and more stretchable than rubber. It's highly possible that protests will erupt further and stronger in Europe. I grew up in a small village with a good number of farmers around back then. At the time I left Germany, around 20 years ago, only 2 full-time farmers remained in business. All the others had to give up. Their bureaucracy have multiplied to the sky. They have to do things that has nothing to do with farming anymore and is completely unsustainable because of it. But the bureaucrats ignore their concerns because they have no clue what farming means. Maybe not yet in 2026, but the day will come when at least the smaller bureaucrats might realize that food doesn't grow in plastic bags in supermarkets. Though by then it will be too late to reverse it. But the arrogance, especially within the evil onion, or better say the leaders there, is already so far disconnected from ordinary people, they don't realize it anymore. And there is no way to reconcile. They anyway won't or can't change their push forwards to a totalitarian technocratic dictatorship. Well, the reason they can go so far, they have the most stupid people in the world on their side. Police. People who go with water cannons, barriers, tear gas against their own people. And who knows how much further they will go in 2026. Not even the most aggressive and stupid dogs will bite the hand that feeds them, but the police does. So you have a bit of an idea what is in their brains. Some are good, But I would say the majority are just brainwashed fools. And surely people who ignore God's word to love their neighbors and will run into their own eternal destruction. If the bureaucrats with the police crushed European farming, and then, for some reasons, international shipping will severely disrupt it, maybe within 2 weeks, the supermarkets will be empty. I'm just wondering, will the Gestapo realize it and stop or still continue to follow dirty orders? Possibly the second. Complete empty shelves may not arrive in 2026, but at one point in the future, it might be with the horses in the book of Revelation. Now the left-green ideological idiocy already infiltrated churches, and somehow I'm glad for it. Honestly, at least it will separate the sheep from the goats. The ones who remain sitting in the pews and listen to rainbow messages or other watered-down sermons will find themselves one day with the lukewarm of the Church of Laodicea being spewed out of the mouth of Elohim. At least it looks like there's a bit hope. The two friends from different areas told me the same thing with the Lutheran Church, where members are leaving in droves. I hope they go to the right churches then. And for school, I hope, whether it is even possible or permitted, that enough parents will stand up against the brainwashing and say to the teachers or school boards, enough is enough. Then the question, will World War 2.2 start? Maybe most name it World War III, but since there's no peace agreement, World War II has not finished, so I name it World War 2.2. Anyway, clear is Europe wants to go full-blown war against Russia, or the EU, better say. But I think they will not do it so quickly, even though they desperately attempt with false flag events and whatever strikes. But clear is there's no chance to win it on both sides. But the propaganda channels in the West constantly talk about the Russian as the aggressor and their desire for expansion, which is completely nonsense. Putin and many of their leaders said it plain and clear. They don't want to go further. But Western propaganda has created their own quote-unquote truth and continue to lie about it. But honestly, who wants to have a piece of land with hardly any natural resources? Limestones, you don't need that. Massive problems with imported Muslim criminals from the Arab, Eastern and North African countries, with hordes of leftist Antifa, together with climate and transgender loons. Who needs that? The only reason for expansion would be better access to the oceans, but that's it. Beside that, there is not much valuable anything anymore. One reason to ignite war is definitely to cover the insane amount of COVID injection deaths and sickness. And the other reason to hide the fact that sooner or later the system or the entire EU apparatus will collapse. When the economy falls apart and people have nothing left, and by that, they'll have nothing to lose, they will be on the streets, plundering whatever they can find. When the people realize the politicians and their friends shoveled millions above millions into their own pockets, tensions will be already too high to ignite a big war. So they have to ignite a big world war before it turns into a civil war, though both are welcome for the elites. As the sanctions against Russia became already a strong boomerang, therefore I could very much assume the only way to save their faces will be more and more pressure and war. All those politicians are nothing but cowards. In my opinion, their diabolic calculation is crushing the economy to usher in the dystopian digital nightmare. At least their plans. If it will happen, I don't know. So I assume the cry for war will continue to increase in 2026 from the leaders, while the population will increase their protests against it. But all in all, I said it already since decades, the main player for such a war will be again Germany. Probably not this year, but later. Some thoughts about China. That's not so easy to guess because there's a significant difference between them and the West. Everything in the Western world is pretty easy to predict because you don't need to prophesy about it because they don't have long-term plans. Their intentions are only to make quick money, and by that it's relatively easy to predict their next step and a rough timeline. The Chinese usually have long-term plans, which makes predictions of their next move very hard. Surely the economic war will go on and intensify, which will make Chinese products more expensive, or some stuff might disappear from the shelves without alternatives. But I saw this already long ago. As the Western corporations are only looking for fast profit, cheap, made in China, made in Bangladesh, made in wherever, so much is outsourced on the altar of profit that there is no turning back. And many markets may collapse because they depend on Chinese parts. And if shipping stops, it's over. Factory for complex technology can't be built within a week, often not even in a year or two. Anyway, the Taiwan thing might pop up at one point again this year. If America invades Venezuela, China may use the opportunity to go into Taiwan at the same time. But I'm sure then you will only hear propaganda about Taiwan and the evil China to hide the American illegal invasion. Though America technically might still have the strongest military, but I doubt they will be able to fight on both fronts at the same time, because eventually Israel will ask for assistance against a supposed Iranian nuke threat. However, if China would make a complete economic war against Europe and America, it surely will harm China very much, but bring the economy of the Western world very quickly to a halt. Finito. Just think about the rare minerals, resources, and many products suddenly cut off. Though I don't think this will happen this year, if ever, but very likely China might form stronger ties with Russia and the BRICS nations. But beside that, it's hard to say. I'm not a China expert anyway. But something more interesting than politics or economy, the next Chinese year, which starts in February 17, I think will be the year of the horse. A communist red horse? Could it be a sign for Revelation 6 verse 4 standing at the door? And if we would calculate the 2020 horse as the white one, now the red? If so, it gets very uncomfortable here. Those in Africa might be in a better place, but probably only if you're not a Christian. It's not only Nigeria where they are being persecuted and slaughtered, but everywhere. In Africa, you have to deal either with daily crime or corruption. Or thinking about Ghana, for example, which would be a beautiful place to live in their rich nature, but witchcraft is there on every corner, even very present in churches. And now the hottest spot in the world, the Middle East and especially Israel. I already mentioned in the last message, even with an official ceasefire, the slaughter in Gaza and West Bank surely continues. How can I make such a statement? Well, easy. You simply can't have fire and petrol stored in the same room. If you believe there is peace in Gaza, you may also believe you can pluck bananas from a lemon tree. Both yellow, just a slightly different taste. But wondering if this year will be the start of building their third temple? It could start simply by the sacrifices and the red heifer, because the cows they already have are getting too old. Who knows, maybe we see some sort of a quote-unquote spectacular event on the Temple Mount, which might change the settings or the status quo there. Since the rumors about it are increasing since years, there's a high expectation of the reordering of the narrative about Jerusalem, Will it finally happen this year? Not sure. If not 26, there's a very high possibility for 2027. And the rest of the land, I assume, will continue in their typical balagan. You can look up that word in Hebrew. And across the borders, there is the word in Isaiah 17 waiting to be fulfilled, with Damascus as a heap of rubble. If not this year, I don't think it's far off in the future. There are talks about the greater Israel that are going on already since a while, but I think nothing significant in that direction will come for 26. But I could be wrong. I'm sure we will hear a lot of blame and false accusation against Iran, beside 1% of truth, and probably some heavy strikes on both sides, including from American forces. That wouldn't be a surprise to me. But in view of all conflicts, just like the usual battles of children in the sandbox, maybe this year just with some bigger toys and more collateral. The hatred against the Jews surely will increase because of a small group of wicked people who give orders, but I covered it mainly already in the 2025 review. And surprisingly, I also received a word about Israel just before the end of the year. You can look it up. So mainly enough said, Israel might sweep off the rest of the buildings that are not yet rubble in Gaza to start building Trump's golden oasis. No, not really. This land is already completely devastated. To build it up, this is near impossible. But there is oil or gas not far from the shore. Again, money, 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 funny money. That's what it's all about. Will we see another man-made pandemic in 26? I don't think so. Possibly some attempts, but surely nothing like 2020. Too many people don't believe the pharma lies anymore, except the ones who have been jabbed and are now programmable. If they would want to lock up the people again, like 2020, I think in many countries we will see massive civil wars. Eventually, it is prepared for 29 or to finish the 2030 agenda, when the 6G virus are turned on full power. And what to expect personally in 2026? Well, as it looks very much that I will not start another project, which I'm grateful for, except something else, something very attractive pops up. At least that's how it looks now for this year. So by that, I will also be able to grow more vegetables and start them sooner. Planting a garden anyway only makes sense on long term, especially in summer when veggies need a lot of watering and a harvest. I might able to use 2 other gardens, which are since years a paradise for weeds. Of course, I would love to have a few girls running around for daily fresh eggs. But I doubt here in the tourist village the neighbors will be happy, as all these garden spots are within the village. There's one field available a bit outside of town with olive trees I could eventually use, but this doesn't look suitable to me for chickens. Anyway, the current situation might help to focus a bit more on the book and to give more time to record music that goes along with the book. I cannot promise it will get finished this year, 2026, though it would be great if so, but surely not before late summer. Though I'm doing pretty well here, but I still have a little desire to have my own little farm. I know farming is a lot of work if you do everything by hand, but Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh said, "We shall till the land." But there's a thing that keeps me away from an own property. One thing are the limitation on financial resources, though there are pretty cheap places available. But a major point are the government regulation and requirements. It's nearly impossible to have a property and being outside the system. To say, I don't bother you, you don't bother me, that's impossible. Government always want to control. Property taxes, insurance, health insurance, tons of registrations, silly financial proofs, and a whole lot of more bureaucracy. I thought once to have a sizable boat, but this is as much or even worse than having a property in terms of bureaucracy. And anyway, hard to find cheap spot to moor or berth. The village here has moon prices. I roughly asked, a 35 to 40-foot boat is around 1,800 euros a month. And this without any extras, no security, no Wi-Fi, nothing, where everyone walking around could just step onto the boat, and there are thousands of tourists in summer. Now, what can we do to escape coming calamities? Hard to say. I heard of some suggestions, which to me sounds great at first glance, but it is very flawed. Some say to buy land, which only works if you have enough money, grow your own food, off-grid, with solar panels, and get together with like-minded people. Sounds theoretically great, but there's an issue. First of all, you need to find a property in a country without property tax, because as soon as the 666 number arrives, you're finished. And with another pandemic, if you don't comply, you might not enjoy a visit from the Gestapo on your property to carry you into a FEMA camp or whatever the name of an equivalent facility will be in other countries. And even if you can avoid all of this, there is more. As soon the world goes down into a total economic collapse with severe food shortages, you need a strong army to defend your land, your food and the animals. Hungry people will come to plunder, that's guaranteed. They will not politely knock at your door and ask if you may have a bowl of rice or a soup. Oh, we are so hungry. They will just take what they find. Yes, it's good to prepare this way, if you're able to, but this is not a guarantee it will help or protect you. The only safe way to be properly prepared is by closeness with Yeshua. Be holy, get your house in order, trust and obey, have faith like a mustard seed, and most important, make sure your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life, especially when the guillotines are rolling in. Going back to the beginning, with nothing new under the sun, wars have been and will be again, kings and kingdoms rising and falling, banks being built, and some might crash this year. And finally, Yeshua came and will come again. A bit of supposed contradiction when Yeshua said, "Behold, I make everything new." And the preachers say there's nothing new under the sun. But what he makes new will be not under the sun, but above the sun or without the sun, and he, the Son, to be our Son. You need to fill out the oaths and the yous. Which will bring me now to the end of this message. Is the rapture in 2026? Regardless of the accurate wording, I assume there will be a lot of opportunities. But I'll leave it up to you which bus you're going to take. Surely more predictions will fall around the Jewish holidays, as always, especially towards the next Yom Teruah, the Feast of the Trumpet. But again, with a calculation of many different calendars, when will it be? No one knows the day and the hour. You better take a shower and purify yourself. Maybe the same forecasters who failed last year will pop up again from nowhere. But anyway, make yourself ready. One thing I would say, 2026 will become another very rough ride. But enough now with this message. I wish you loads of blessings and Adonai be with you. Shalom, shalom.